Yes, welcome into Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, Monday, August 28th. Big game breakdown. Ooh, what a game. Kluber and the Indians take on Severino and the Yankees. Also, everyone's in the AL wildcard race. The Orioles are at home against the Mariners, and Gill Alexander from the VESA Network and Beating the Book podcast, part one with him, sports betting legalization. We'll get to all that coming up. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books in a second. Mayweather beats McGregor. Play of the day winner, stops it in the 10th round, as low as $2 in play after the second round. I can't say McGregor embarrassed himself. He landed more punches than Pacquiao did, although I think the judges should be drug tested, that Mayweather landed 9 punches combined in the first 3 rounds, and 2 of the judges gave him 2 of the first 3 rounds.
So I'm watching with a really heavy group of bettors. All right, I got people over at the house, and these guys have bet. They're all in. A number of them are all in. There's a bunch of guys over at the house. All right, round 1, they're all right. Round 2, all of a sudden, it gets real quiet in that room, Paulie. And I'm talking, there's like 50 guys over, and it gets you can hear a pin drop after round 2. The stress in that room was insane. And then the rest of the way was real easy. Once Mayweather took control of the fight, he took control of the fight. There was no question that he was going to win. There was no question about the outcome. But for a little while there, those first couple of rounds, I'll tell you what, there was a lot of stress in the room where I was at.
Well, as we talked about too, and we referenced Larry Pepe, MMA expert, McGregor's cardio is weak. And the game plan where let him tire himself out. He was gassed by the 4th round and couldn't put his hands up in the 8th. And then the 10 straight shots that he landed in the 10th. But you could have middled this, at least in Las Vegas. At the South Point, the total was 7.5 rounds. Most places had it 9.5. So you could have middled that. And how about this? Mayweather went to a local property and tried to bet $400,000 on the fight going under, and they wouldn't take it. He was pissed.
As he should. Here's a quote from Mayweather. I think that we bet 100 grand, I'm assuming, on under 9.5 rounds. I gave my guy 6 figures to go bet. I have to make sure he bet because earlier today I went to the sports book to bet and they wouldn't let me bet. And there were a lot of questions. He went to one of the Cantor properties, I believe. That's where he is known to wager at here in Vegas. And they didn't know, is the boxer allowed to bet on himself? Is he allowed to bet on the total? It hadn't been an issue in the past. They decided not to accept the wager. So what did Mayweather do? He got somebody else to make the bet for him. That's what money does.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That it's happened many times. A fighter can bet on himself. Interesting. I asked Jimmy Vaccaro about that. He would not have accepted the bet on the under, which they said no to 400,000, but then they ended up taking 87,000.
And, of course, the under cashes with 25 seconds to spare. So, nice POD winner, Paulie. And I'm glad you made a score on that. I wish I'd have done the same. I know all the guys that are hanging out at my house really enjoyed it. Even having a couple of sports bit viewers stop by for the crib. Thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll do it again next time.
And it was a huge win for the books, one of the biggest ever that they've had. And how about this handle? It blew past Mayweather-Pacquiao, which was, I believe, $60 million all time, blew past that. They think this thing could do $100 million and get to a Super Bowl type handle as well. So there were $6 million bets here in Las Vegas on Floyd. There was 1 on the New England-Atlanta Super Bowl. Think about that. And it just was coming in left and right with the Maloofs bet $880,000 on Mayweather, and then you ended up having a $6 million bets on Floyd. Unbelievable, Teddy.
Well, when you think about it, it makes sense. Floyd was a right side on Saturday night. Not going to tell me there was a right side in the Super Bowl. I know Atlanta all right, Atlanta, right side. No, they weren't.
Right.
Right side. No, they weren't. Mayweather was the right side. You're supposed to attract bigger bets when you have the opportunity to take advantage of quote-unquote right side wagers.
Yes, all right, bad beats. This was a tough one. How about the Giants laying 4.5 against the Jets? They led 29-3 at the half, and they led 32-18 midway through the 4th. They had to stop a 2-point conversion to win because Bryce Petty was Superman. Then he got hurt, and Hackenberg let him in through the back door, but Hackenberg was horrible. He threw 2 pick sixes.
Yeah, 2 pick sixes in the first half. That's how the Jets were down 29-3. And you're not thinking about this Jets offense is going to be backdooring a whole lot of teams this year. But Bryce Petty came in, threw 3 touchdowns, as you mentioned. And then Hackenberg came back in to throw one with a minute left to get through the back door. But, Petty, MCL injury, he could still return to the Jets, but we don't know. Hackenberg may still make the team by default. Josh McCown is clearly the starter moving forward for the New York Jets. That being said, McCown did nothing. And if you had the Giants, that was a brutal beat.
I think we can call this one a moose, too. One of the worst of the season. The Diamondbacks-Giants total was 9.5. It was 2-0 in the bottom of the 8th. And then Matt Cain comes in, and the Diamondbacks put up a 9 spot in the bottom of the 8th.
Yeah, that's insane. You got under 9.5, the score is 2-0. You're feeling pretty good about that wager in the bottom of the 8th. Steve Stratton, and Corbin cruised. They combined for twice as many strikeouts. They had 18 strikeouts versus only 9 hits allowed. And then San Fran decided to try Matt Cain out of the bullpen. Well, of the 10 batters he faced in the 8th inning, 8 of them reached base and scored, 2 of them on home runs. Brutal beat for the underbettors in that game.
But some bad bets. College football, 5-game Saturday, was a lot of fun. Nothing but Rice money all over town in Vegas. At the South Point, they opened 38, bet down to 30.5. They were run out 62-7. They were never in the game. And UMass was bet up from Pick'em to 3, and Hawaii won on the road, 38-35.
Yeah, and we put out Rice earlier in the week as a play of the day here on SportsBit. As the week progressed, if we don't have a way to undo a play, but once Houston started getting the flood of the century and all the kids from Rice calling home or not being able to get a hold of people at home, we saw the no-show from the Texans. We saw a no-show from the Owls. That's something that cannot be fully factored into a point spread necessarily when you have off-field distractions. And when your house is getting ruined and your campus is getting flooded, that's a pretty big off-field distraction for the Rice Owls. Here's a quote from head coach David Bailiff. This is going to be a continuing issue for all the teams in Houston. Rice, no exception to that. Quote from Bailiff. I don't think we're going to get to Houston for a while. Of course, they're stuck in Australia now. If we could, I don't know that we should. We're going to land in LA. Then we talked about maybe going to Dallas. Chad Morris has reached out to us. So has Mac Rhodes at Baylor. I think it's wonderful. I got the text messages last night from them. 2 guys I respect a lot in the business. All true for Rice, but bottom line, when you have these type of distractions for college kids, it's generally too much to overcome. Bad bet on Rice, bad bet on UMass. The books cleaned up in both those games.
All right, back to the books now. Let's go rapid fire. NFL preseason. Hey, after losing 10 in a row, Sean Payton's won 2 straight preseason games, and the Saints were bet up from 1.5 to 4. They shut out the Texans 13-0, and the Chargers took money plus 2.5 down to Pick'em. They beat the Rams 21-19.
How about that Saints defense? Break up the Saints D, my friend. They held the Texans to 13 first downs, just 246 total yards. Of course, the money came against Houston because they weren't playing any of the wide receivers. Cluster injuries at wide receiver already for Houston. DeAndre Hopkins didn't play. Braxton Miller didn't play. Will Fuller didn't play. They didn't score any points. Saints took the money. Saints got the money. That was a bad result for the house. And similar story with Chargers and Rams. Ton of Chargers money. They were up 21-0 in that ball game. Joey Bosa sack Jared Goff. He set up a 76-yard fumble return for a touchdown. One-sided affair. Rams tried to come through the back door. Didn't happen. Chargers with the win. That was another bad result for the house.
All right. And baseball, look, Cubs lose 2 out of 3 to the Phillies. Phillies open plus 180, close 155. Cubs, they beat the Cubs 6-3. Hoskins does it again. 11 home runs in his first 18 games. Bananas.
That's easily, Paulie, an all-time MLB record. Baseballs are flying out of the park at a historic clip in 2017. Rice Hoskins, maybe the poster child for that so far. What, he got 11 dingers in just 18 ball games.
And look at this steam on the Indians. Open 165, closed 220. They thumped the Royals 12-0. They won the weekend series, swept the series, outscored them 20-0. Shut them out 3 games in a row.
Yeah, talk about a one-sided affair. And when you're talking about a line getting bet from minus 165 all the way up to minus 220, that's significant steam when all that cashes and the books have to pay it all out. Yeah, Paulie, another bad result for the house, but it still didn't make up for what they made in Mayweather-McGregor.
Up next, big game breakdown. What a matchup. Kluber and Severino. Also get to the Mariners and the Orioles on SportsBet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBet Betting Insight today. Time for big game breakdown. Always sponsored and powered by BetOnline. Exceptional customer service, strong promotions, and every type of wager you're looking for out there. Check out the bonus page, sportsbookreview.com, for the latest and best offers to open a new account today. Look at this matchup. Kluber against Severino. Yankees at home. Both sides $1.10, 7.5. The total under -125. Monster weekend for the Indians, as we mentioned, swept the Royals. They also are ahead of the Red Sox for possible home field advantage. Kluber 12-4 with a 2.65. Since the break, 5-1 with a 2.39. 85 strikeouts versus 39 hits. No flukes in these numbers, Teddy, when you look at the advanced metrics as well.
No, I mean, Corey Kluber has been truly an ace. And this Indians team, and I'm not going to say we wrote off, but Cleveland played mediocre baseball for extended stretches this season. Now, all of a sudden, here we are, pennant race time, late August into September, and this team is sitting in position to get home field in the first round of a playoff series. And you talk about Kluber's numbers, look at the advanced metrics. There's no flukes. That's exactly how you called it, Paulie. Look, the ERA is 2.65. Well, the fielding independent pitching is 2.56. The adjusted fielding independent pitching is 2.49. The Sierra, 2.63. And look at the swinging strike percentage. This is a stat that really stands out. 16.2%. That's number one in all of baseball. How good is that? Well, look at the swinging strike percentage single season leaders over the last 6 seasons. You got some great pitchers there. Hamels, Darvish, Kershaw, Scherzer. None of them higher than what Corey Kluber is doing right now in 2017. And it's surely worth noting, Paulie, Kluber faced the Yankees at home on August 3rd. His only start against them this season. He had a complete game, 5-0 win, 11 strikeouts, only 3 hits allowed, 1 walk. He dominated that game. The only run the Yankees got was on a Gary Sanchez home run.
So the Red Sox get swept, which means the Yankees are only 2.5 games out of first, and they have the top of the wild card spot, the number one wild card spot. We've been telling you on SportsBet about Severino. Huge upside. You're cashing tickets with Severino. Yankees 7-1 in his start since the break. He's allowed 1 earned run or less in 7 of the last 8. The only bad game take for 10 runs against Boston, 3 starts back. So since that bad start, 2-0 with a 0.69 ERA, 17 strikeouts versus 10 hits allowed. For what it's worth, also Kluber has owned the Yankees throughout his career. 4-1 with an ERA of under 2. And you're right, Teddy. Shut him down August 3rd. That was against Sonny Gray. They haven't given Gray much run support as well, but it's a fantastic. How often do you see a 7.5 in an American League game?
And if you didn't forbid me from betting unders, I definitely look at the under in this ball game because it has all the makeups of a pitcher's duel. And again, the 7.5s that are out there now, I'm not convinced they're going to be there much longer. Money has already come in on the under of this ball game. And I love a guy like Severino when it comes to the stats. I want a guy who has this one outlier performance. You talked about that miserable start against Boston, where he gave up 10 runs in that contest, and everything else has been dynamite. But that one bad start makes all the aggregate stats look weaker than they actually are. Luis Severino is an ace. He's been pitching like one all season.
Game number 2, powered by BetOnline. Mariners and the Orioles. Gonzalez against Tillman. The Orioles are $1.20. 10 the total. Heavy money on the under early. It was bet down from 11 to 10 already. And also some money for the Mariners as Tillman's been terrible. Orioles get to sweep in Boston. They're back to 500. But again, everyone's in this damn race because the American League wildcard teams are so bad. They're only 2 spots, 2 games back of the Twins. And the key to the surge has been Scope. Look at these numbers. He's hitting .307. His on base is .354. The slugging's .541. 28 home runs and 79 RBIs. He's number 3 in WAR for second baseman as well. And they need something from Tillman. He hasn't been able to, but we'll get to Tillman in a second. But how about what Scope's been able to do here? No one talks about this guy. He's having a monster year.
Exactly. Then that's one of the things we like to do on SportsBet is kind of highlight the guys that, for whatever reason, the mainstream media hasn't been picking up on. And here's Scope. You know, he was I thought he was rushed to the big leagues a little bit early in 2014. He wasn't ready. Took him a couple of years. All of a sudden now, He's one of the best players in baseball at his position, and a guy who the betting markets really don't account for very much when he's in or out of the lineup. Where you're talking about a .541 slugging percentage, 28 dingers on the campaign from your second base spot. That's impressive. And you talk about Chris Tillman. Here's a guy who went 65-33 with a 3.81 ERA over the previous 5 seasons. This year, 1-7 with a 7.75 ERA. And he's only been used out of the bullpen for a couple of weeks, or they stuck him in the bullpen for a couple of weeks. Then he started against the Angels last week, and he was just as bad. 4 runs allowed and didn't make it out of the 6th inning. 6 walks, only 2 strikeouts, 2 home runs allowed. Yes, he's had 7 days off since that start. Yes, it's only his 4th appearance in the last 25 days. But right now, Chris Tillman is a pitcher that I have a hard time putting any of my hard-earned money on. I don't want Tillman. I don't want under when he's the starting pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles.
Then you have the Mariners who's still trying to hang in this, and it's been amazing with this depleted rotation. Look at the rotation, because King Felix is hurt and Paxton's hurt. It's Albers, Gallardo, Miranda, Ramirez, Gonzalez. They managed to go 6-4 through 2 full passes with that outfit. But this is a surprise. With the extra workload still, and a big workload, the bullpen's getting it done.
Yeah, it sure is. Look at the stats right here. Post All-Star break, they're number 2 in the majors in innings pitched, which tells you how weak that starting staff has been for Seattle. Yet, even with all of those innings, number 5 in ERA, number 3 in fielding independent pitching, the bullpen has been rock solid. But be aware, with all of those innings, we could see cracks a-coming. Keep your eye on that Seattle pen over the back half of the campaign. And here's Gonzalez, a guy who was a first-round pick for the Cardinals back in 2013. He hasn't shown the stuff to get MLB hitters out. 0-1 with a 7.40 ERA over 4 starts. The fielding and independent pitching also over 7. And he's not eating innings. Only lasted 17.1 innings across those 4 starts, giving up 26 hits in those 17 innings while only striking out 11 batters. And, oh, by the way, it's also a quick second look for Baltimore against Gonzalez. They lost 7-6 in Seattle against him on August 16th. Gonzalez only had 1 strikeout of the 20 batters he faced, and 9 of those batters got hits.
All right, up next, Gill Alexander. We'll get back to this game, by the way, with play of the day. Up next, Gill Alexander from the betting seminar in Costa Rica from VESA, and he will talk about sports betting legalization as well. Part 1 coming up with Gill up next on SportsBet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Welcome back to SportsBet Betting Insight today, and it's deep dive time. I've got one of my favorite guests, a gentleman by the name of Gill Alexander here with me. Gill, hey, nobody ever shakes hands on air.
Shake hands, for God's sake.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Who are you, and why should people care about anything that you say?
Well, I don't know about the latter, but I was a podcaster back in the fledgling days of podcasts. Now everybody has a podcast, but I had one, back in 2010. So when most people did not have one, and I've done a podcast called the Beating the Book podcast for 7 years now. And recently was honored to be asked to be one of the original hosts, along with Brent Musburger at the Vegas Stats and Information Network, VESA, the first ever Sirius XM satellite radio station dedicated to sports betting.
And certainly, as a sports bettor and someone who enjoys talking about sports betting, VESA is a breath of fresh air. Let's be honest. You're on a national level. Yeah. You guys are bringing gambling up to the next stage.
That is the hope, and that is the intent. And to the extent that we're able to do that, then we have done our job. It is, truly, like everything I've done for years has led precisely to this. This is what so many of us have dreamt about. And, the Musburger family, it's not just Brent. His family was the one that came up with this idea, and they've seen it through to fruition, much to the, assists also, thanks to Michael Gone, who runs the South Point Hotel Casino in Las Vegas, who built the studio, and that's where we broadcast from. So far, we've been on 5 months, and we can't wait to attack our first football season.
Now, when I moved to Vegas, I moved in '98, and the first time I ever heard anyone talk about an all-gambling network, I think it was Kenny White, the former head of LVSC, and this had to be 02, 03, he was talking about it. And people are looking at him like he's crazy. That's never going to happen. There's not a broad enough audience for that. There is a broad enough audience for that. Apparently.
There is. You know, look, times are a-changing, right? We talk all the time about pending sports betting legislation. Obviously, the wheels of change move very slowly in the U.S. We've seen that with marijuana. We've seen that with other social issues. And so, you know, and those of us who deal in this sphere, we obviously, no surprise, see the hypocrisy that has existed with sports betting for so many years. And so it moves forward, and hopefully VESA is one of the staples of it moving forward.
And one of the things about the hypocrisy, because obviously there's hypocrisy everywhere. The leagues are saying, we hate gambling, and they know that their rating is based on gambling.
Of course.
And the states are saying, oh, this gambling is evil, and yet, oh, look at these lotteries, you know? Buy your lottery tickets here and get 20% return on investment or 50% return on investment, but you can't possibly win. So there's hypocrisy everywhere in that regard, and yet it seems to me that the hypocrisy has served us rather well. All across the country, people are betting.
Yeah.
Nobody's sweating about it. You can find a sports book, you can find an offshore book, you can find a local bookie, you can be in Nevada. The ratings are up across leagues. What's wrong with the hypocrisy other than the fact that it's hypocrisy?
Well, it's funny you bring that up at the FBC 2017 convention here that just went on the last 2 days. Part of my talk was to delve into the sort of third rail of what could happen. So you make a good point. This has sort of just existed, and you know, look, none of us who are betting offshore are getting prosecuted. They're more, law enforcement would be much more interested in those running those operations. So for the average American bettor, let's be honest, it's been all right. But when we talk about this impending Supreme Court legislation, whether it happens in October or November, the narrative is that one of two things can happen. Again, PASPA could be upheld, status quo remains, like we've been doing, or it could be ruled unconstitutional. And the assumption on the ruling of it being unconstitutional is that every state will get its own betting from New Jersey on down the line, any state that wants to do it, and that will open up a wonderful hodgepodge of betting opportunities, not to the leagues. The leagues would want it to be federally regulated. Being a hodgepodge makes them nervous, and it creates a very interesting scenario. But the third rail, Teddy, is the fact that in ruling it unconstitutional, what most people don't talk about is that under the Equal Sovereignty Statute, and there have been legal papers written about this, the Duke Law Journal published something on this, there has been a Supreme Court amicus brief about this for the pending legislation. This could be ruled that PASPA in itself, initially in its inception, was unconstitutional, and so it could roll back that even Nevada can't have sports betting. Now that won't be in perpetuity, it'll be a temporary thing, but just the notion of once it gets into a legal setting, we no longer have control. Maybe what we're wishing for here is more than we really want, to your point. So that could happen. Amateur betting, there could be a carve out where they say, okay, sports betting, it's allowed, but not amateur betting. We could see a world where college sports will not be allowed to be bet on. So there's a lot of things that could still happen, and you're right, maybe this was a good thing for a long time. We'll see what happens.
Sure. And it really, to me, is people are assuming once the Supreme Court gets the case, and if they rule in our favor, that things are going to move effectively across the country, and that there will be some type of federal legislation. Having worked in Washington for a couple of summers, I can tell you that nothing happens in D.C. without an extraordinary amount of money behind it.
That's right.
So you can count on, state by state, a hodgepodge of rules and regulations, which may not serve the average bettor very well, especially when we're talking about the states trying to carve out revenue.
Oh, right. I mean,
this.
Look, that comes, I said it also, I said, let's say we get past what I just talked about, and it's regulated, or it's legalized, I should say, tomorrow. The math has to work out, right? So there's the reason that it works now in Nevada, for instance, is because the tax is so low in Nevada, that the bettor has great options in the state of Nevada.
1/4 of 1%.
1/4 of 1%. It's competitive with offshore. But there was a time that most people aren't aware of where it was 10%, where it was 2%. The best example I can use is regarding baseball. For baseball betting, Nevada books weren't allowed to offer dime lines. And so if they don't get the math right, and that's a big if because hodgepodge makes it tough.
Sure. And we're talking about politicians who don't tend to get things right.
They want to get their cut. Leagues might want to get their cut. If those savings, and I'm using savings in a bizarro definition, get passed on to the consumer, what are we going to do? Instead of it achieving what it intends for us to be like, oh, great, regulated sports betting, we'll be like, we're going to bet offshore, thanks very much.
Sure, at minus 120 or
Right.
minus 125.
Absolutely.
Every bookie's still in business, every offshore is still in business. Great information right here from Gill Alexander from the VESA Network and the Beating the Book podcast. Gil, thanks so much for being here. Let's do part 2 tomorrow. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Right here on SportsBit, Betting Insights Today.
Nice work, Teddy. Another great interview from Costa Rica. That was part 1 with Gill Alexander. Money time. Play of the day. Back to Seattle and Baltimore. Over betting number 911, 912. Let's go over 10. Nothing but a headache for Tillman. Look at the numbers on these 2 starters. Gonzalez got an ERA of 6 and change, and Tillman is 1-7 with a 7.75 ERA. Expect fireworks tonight. We bucking the trend here. We're going to go over with all that under money coming earlier today. Let's go over 10 in the Seattle-Baltimore game for the play of the day. Locked and loaded. More college football, some big games Thursday, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan, Florida, and BYU, LSU on Saturday. It's going to be a great weekend here. All the games will run down on SportsBet. Thanks for watching Betting Insight Today on SBRPicks.com.